we run out of space from the Ionian, but we're going to say that would be an IN. So we'd go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. If we look at here, because that would be the next. So here, this repeats here, and then that would be 6 up going this way. All right. So now the question is, all right, what's the distance if I look at continents and oceans? So if I take one scale degree, which would be staying on the same point. Obviously, I didn't move anywhere from the standpoint of modal half steps, and the scale degree would be 1. And then the notes would be, I didn't move anywhere. I stayed on one point. Note half steps would be the same, and that would be a 0 note away perfect first. Why? Because we just named the convention over here. 0 note away is a perfect first. Remembering that the 1 represents the scale degree, and the 0 I am adding. Most people don't say it, but you have to know it because that's the important thing, right? It's 0 notes away is really the important thing. The P is not important. If you add the 0, you can drop the P. Okay, and then so the modal distance I would like to say is it's a 0 note away from the Ionian node, 0th modal half step, which would be the first scale degree. All right, what if I go up the second scale degree? What does that mean? That means I went a distance of 1 continent up. So that means if that would be an ID modal range or a 1-2 modal range, I'm going 1 continent up. And so we'd say that would be 1 modal half step up. That's what it means to go 1 continent up, which means it would be the second scale degree. So if I look at this one, from here to here, there it is, for example. And so the note half steps would be 2. So it takes 2, which would be continents and oceans. What do we call that? We call that a 2 note away major second. Why is it a major second? Because the major represents that it's in the major scale, but that major second is also in the Aeolian. So it doesn't really tell you anything except about the major scale for the most part, unless you use a bunch of tricks and conventions to make it, to shoehorn it into giving more meaning than it really was designed to have in the first place. I'd rather call it a 2 note away from the Ionian first modal half step, right? Because it's 2 notes away, continents and oceans, and it's the first modal half step. But they made this the first, which means it's the second scale degree, right? So then if I go 3 up, the scale degree 3, the modal distance would be 2. So now I'm just going to say this is going to go from here to here, and that would be an IP. So now we're going from Ionian to the Phrygian, which would be a 1-3. So the modal half steps or continents up would be 2, 1, 2, and the scale degree would be 3, 1, 2, 3, and the note half steps would be 4, ocean 1, continent 2, ocean 3, and 4. So then what do we call that? We call that, I would call it a 4 note away major third. Most people just say major third, but if you add the 4, you can drop the M because it's the distance of 4 that should tell you that that distance will land you on a continent if you start from the Ionian mode. And I would rather even start to memorize, most people don't even think about it this way, but I think it would be useful to say that's an IP modal range, right? If you think about it this way, you're going to say it's a 4 note away from the Ionian node, second modal half step. So then that should tell you where you're going on the map. If I'm going 4 notes away from a major scale or the Ionian mode, where's that going to land you? It's going to land you on the P. So I should be able to name it either way, right? I should be able to say the modal range is an IP modal range. What's the distance? Well, it's a 4 note away from the Ionian node, second modal half step. If someone tells you that you're going 4 notes away from the Ionian node, second modal half step, then you should be able to say, well, where am I going to land? I'm going to land on the Phrygian continent. I'm going to land on the third, right? Either I want to be able to see it kind of either way. Again, naming it by not note, but node, the mode, because that will be the same for all 12 collections of notes, right? So what if I go 4 scale degrees? That would be 3 up. So if I go 4, that would be up here. Then that would land us on the Lydian. That would be a 1-4 modal range. So we would say that would be modal half steps of 3. So 1, 2, 3. it would be a scale degree of 4, meaning if I make that the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would be notes up of 5, meaning ocean, continent, ocean, continent, continent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what do we call a distance of 5? A perfect fourth. I'd rather call it a 5-note away fourth, or a 5-note away perfect fourth, right? But it would rather be called a 5-note away from the Ionian node third modal half step, 1, 2, 3, which would give us the fourth scale degree if I make that the 1, which is stupid to do, but we're stuck with it. All right, what if we have a fifth? And so I'm trying to find the fifth, which means I'm going 4 continents up. So if I go 4 continents up, I'd be out here. So I can see that's going to be, if I go 4 continents up from the Ionian, it would be 1 plus 4, or of course the fifth, which would be Mixolydian, an IX modal range, a 1-5 modal range. So that means it's going to be 4 continents up, or 4 modal half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be scale degrees. If I make this to 1, then 5, because the scale degrees are all off by 1. And the note half steps would then be the continents and oceans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up. What do we call a 7-note distance? A perfect fifth. I'd rather call it a 7-note away fifth, but you could put the P in there, 7-note away P5, 7-note away perfect fifth. It would better be named a 7-note away from the Ionian node, 4th modal half step, 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be the 5th scale degree. What if I go 6 up? Let's go to this one down here. If I go 6 up from like this one, then that would be here. So now I'm going 5 up, or 6th scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would be it's going to land me on the Aeolian. That would be a 1-6 modal range. So then it would be 5 modal half steps, or 5 continents up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means it would be the 6th scale degree if I make that the 1, which means it has continents and oceans of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, and what do we call a 9-note away distance? A major 6. But I'd rather call it a 9-note away 6th, or a 9-note away major 6, or better yet, a 9-note away from the Ionian node, 5th modal half step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would be the 6th scale degree. What if I go 7 scale degree, and it would be the 6th modal half steps? So this repeats here, and so then I can go to this one. It's going to go to the Locrian. So now that would be an IN modal range, a 1-7 modal range, which would be 6 modal half steps, or continents up. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This repeats 5, 6. That would be, if I make the first one the 1, it would be the 7th scale degree. And then it's going to be, why is this being lame? 11 distance, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 repeats here. 10, 11. A distance of 11. What's that called? A major 7. I'd rather call it an 11-note away 7th, but you could put the major in there, 11-note away major 7. Better yet, an 11-note away from the Ionian node, 6th modal half step, right? All right, let's go to the next one, and let's say we're now measuring from the Lydian mode. So I've now made the Ionian mode green, and the Lydian mode is going to be blue. And we're going to be asking the question, hey, if I go 1 continent up from the Lydian, is the distance in oceans and continents the same as going 1 continent up from the Ionian? What if I go 2 continents up from the Lydian? Is the distance the same in continents and oceans as if I go 2 continents up from the Ionian? So we're going to start off by not going anywhere. We're going to imagine the modal half steps are 0 modal half steps. That's going to be a distance of a Lydian to Lydian. We stay in the same spot. That would be a 4-4 modal range, 0 modal half steps, which would be the first scale degree. And that means that the note half steps would be 0. We didn't go anywhere from the Lydian. So then what's going to be the interval name? Typically, it's going to be a 0-note away perfect first, a 0-note away perfect first. I'd rather call it a 0-note away from the Lydian node, 0th modal half step, right? So we didn't go anywhere, but we're on a different continent, right? We're measuring from here instead of from here, and we didn't go anywhere from there. The distance is the same, clearly. So what if I go then, I'm looking at this one first, if I go 1 modal half step up. From Lydian, that would be the fourth going up 1 to the fifth. Or that would be then a YX, or Lydian Mixolydian, or a 4-5 modal range, a 4-5 modal range. So that would mean it's a scale degree of the second. If I make that the 1, that would be the second. And then the note half steps, is it the same number of continents and oceans? Well, it's 2. That's the same, right? So if I go 2 notes up, continents and oceans, I land on the first modal half step, or the second scale degree. So it's a different location, of course. It's Mixolydian as opposed to the Dorian, but I still land on the first continent up if I go 2 steps, or 2 continent and oceans. We call that a 2-note away major second, which is the same as what we had here in the Ionian, and that's going to then be a 2-note away Lydian first modal half step, which is what I would rather call it. So what if I go 3 then up? So now I'm going to say, all right, what if I go up to the third, or we go up to here, and I compare that to going a distance of 3 continents up from the Ionian? That's going to be then 2 modal half steps up. So what would we call that? We'd land on the Aeolian, so it's going to be a YA. And if we go 2 up from the 4, that's going to land us on the 6, which is the Aeolian. So it's a 4-6 modal range. The scale degree would be the third if I make that the 1, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be a notes, the distance in continents and oceans, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that the same as the Ionian? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's going to be the name then? We're going to call it a 4-note away major third. I'd rather call it, though, a 4-note away from the Lydian second modal half step. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's say we go down 3 modal half steps up. So now we're going to go 3 modal half steps from the Lydian, or the 4th scale degree. Is that the same as here? There looks to be a difference in the pattern. So that would give us a YN modal range, Lydian to a Locrian modal range, and that would be a 4 plus 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which would be the Locrian. That would be a 4-7 modal range. We went 3 modal half steps, or continents up, which would be the 4th scale degree. What's the distance? It's a oh, that's a crazy 6. Now, when you see a 6, you should be thinking, oh, that's a crazy distance. I don't care if I'm going backwards or forwards. 6 is strange. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if I went up the same number of continents? 1, 2, 3, third continent up, 4th scale degree. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notice this one is different. And this is why the Lydian might not be as used as the Ionian or Mixolydian, because it has that interval that's quite odd. So notice my naming convention is off. It should be a 6-note away augmented 4th. I pulled this in from Excel. This is that naming problem where you have 2 names for the same interval. So I'm just going to note that, because I don't want to rework my whole Excel worksheet for those 2 naming conventions. We talk about that in Excel, but just note that that's a weird one. So I'd rather call it a 6-note away from the Lydian 3rd modal half step, which you would think would be the 4th scale degree, not the 5th, which means you'd have to call it a augmented 4th. Now, why is this happening? This is happening in part because, remember, they had to make this 7 perfect. They didn't have to, but that's what they did, which means that the one below it couldn't be a minor. They had to come up with another name, which they came up with a diminished 5th or an augmented 4th.